With Spider-Man Brand New Day just being released into theaters this weekend, I thought it was time for me to stop and rank all 11 theatrically released Spider-Man films that we've gotten from the worst to the best. And as I go into this, I've seen both all of the Raimi trilogy, both of the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man films, the two um, animated Spider-Verse films, and then all of the Tom Holland MCU Spider-Man films. So I'm ranking all of those from worst to best. Jump down in the comments section, share your ranking of all the theatrically released Spider-Man films, or as many as you have seen. So if you've only seen a few of them, or 8 out of 11, or however many, rank them down below in the comments section of how you would rank them from worst to best. So for me, jumping into this, coming in at number 11 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, this is pretty much everyone's popular pick for the weakest by far of the live action theatrically released Spider-Man films that we've gotten, and for good reason. This film, on a story level, on just the amount of characters that were mandated to be included in this film, it's just a mess. Now, the things that work are a lot of kind of what work about the first Amazing Spider-Man film. All of the stuff with Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy are still some of the best, if not the best, chemistry and romantic sequences we've seen with Peter and a love interest of his in any of these films that we have gotten. But honestly, beyond all of that, and of course, the truly emotionally devastating ending of this film for Peter and Spider-Man, the rest of this film is just a mess where you have, of course, Jamie Foxx as Electro, and then Paul Giamatti in the opening as the Rhino, but it's like the most Looney Tunes over the top, just truly bad version of that character that it just does not feel like it's the Rhino at all. But then with Jamie Foxx as Electro, his look as in human form is just kind of just looks ridiculous. And then once he becomes Electro, getting electrocuted by the eels, the bat of eels, his look as Electro kind of looks silly with the CGI, but at the same time, then you also have put in Harry Osborn as the Hobgoblin all of a sudden, and then while that character and use of that character brings us to how devastating the ending is for the movie, and that's basically what everyone talks about with this movie, is just how brutally devastating and sad the ending is for Peter. While that the use of Harry Osborn as the Hobgoblin is best used for that, the rest of it is just like you just don't really care. It's not set up enough or explored enough or anything, because we are focused on also the Rhino in the beginning, and then the main story with Electro and his battle with Peter, because he feels like Peter doesn't, and as Spider-Man doesn't really take him seriously or really remember him, so he hates him for it. And so all of that is just really, just, it feels really hollow and just not particularly interesting. Now, for all of these films, they're still all incredibly watchable, even this one, but this is by far the Spider-Man, the one theatrical Spider-Man film, or one of two that I really have the most issues with on most levels. Now, coming in at number 10 is Spider-Man Far From Home, our second outing with Tom Holland as Spider-Man in the MCU. Coming off of the epic event of Avengers Endgame, we follow Peter and MJ and Ned and all of their classmates as they go on a trip to Europe, while we get introduced to Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, Quentin Beck as and Mysterio, and then you have Nick Fury in there as well. And while while like all the performances in the film are really good, especially Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, and all the powers that Mysterio can do are really, really cool and visualized really well, and are some of the most visually interesting things we've seen in any Spider-Man film and really any MCU film. The issue is that the actual um, reason for Mysterio being there and his motive, and then also Peter having the glasses that Tony Stark gave to him, I guess, in his will after Tony died. It's just all super ridiculous and just does not work on a plot level whatsoever. Because if you just stop and think about Tony, who's now dead, leaving his military high grade glasses to a high schooler's who was dead for like 5 years before they were able to succeed in Endgame and bring everybody back. He leaves those glasses to a high schooler who has just returned to being alive in the world and not giving him any instructions on how to use them whatsoever. And then on top of that, Mysterio's motive being scorned once again for like the seventh or eighth time at that point in the MCU, for scorned for Tony Stark, who is now dead. So it's like we're doing this even after the character's dead. It's just like utterly ridiculous. And then as well, Mysterio's goal is to be like the greatest fake superhero slash Avenger, of using his powers to create all these different um natural disaster kind of monsters or something like that, to then defeat them and show that he can show up and be one of those heroes at the end of the day to step up and save humanity. But then like what's his plan beyond that? Like if a true like real threat comes and to for humanity and Earth, to threaten Earth and humanity, he's just going to be utterly destroyed and just like look like an absolute fool. So, yeah, Far From Home, while very entertaining at times, is just a very flawed film as well on a plot level, and as well on a villain motive level. So yeah, that comes in at number 10. Coming in at number 9 is the original, is the Amazing Spider-Man, the first Andrew Garfield Spider-Man film, which was a solid return to Spider-Man. Now, he is great as Peter Parker in Spider-Man. He is, for me, probably the best actor of the three to portray Peter Parker in Spider-Man. And then we get introduced to his great chemistry with Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy and their relationship building through that film and then into the second film. And so that is all great. But this film came out only like 5 years after the Raimi trilogy had ended, 10 years after the first Raimi Spider-Man film. So it kind of felt like we're going back to the beginning of Spider-Man just too soon and trying to tell that story again in some a little different way, but still kind of is still the same. And while the villain of the Lizard looks cool, and I mean his plan is like, of course, ridiculous, but all of that is cool. It's just the film feels just too soon to be a thing, while having some of the best performances from the best performance for me of any Peter Parker Spider-Man with alongside him with his love interest in any of the Spider-Man films that we've gotten. And then beyond that, the stuff with Aunt May and Uncle Ben, again, trying to tell that with great power comes great responsibility speech, try to tell that in a different way. It just felt convoluted, kind of, and like you're just spinning wheels at that point. So, yeah, The Amazing Spider-Man, while still a very solid outing for a Spider-Man film is still kind of one of the lesser Spider-Man films that we've gotten released in theaters. Coming in at number 8 is Spider-Man 3. And this is a film that I have always thoroughly enjoyed ever since I first saw it, like now 15 years ago, or maybe even a little longer than that. Because it is the Spider-Man film that I believe is definitely the most memeable, but also the most quotable Spider-Man film we've ever gotten, for better and for worse, of course, because the film in and of itself is I would say, a satisfying conclusion to the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi iteration of Spider-Man and for that trilogy. The film itself, though, is kind of similar to The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to somewhat a lesser degree, is overstuffed with its villains and somewhat convoluted with its story, where you have a better version of Harry Osborn turning into the Hobgoblin and he's battling Spider-Man he knows as Peter. And then we get Eddie Brock as Venom, which is by far the worst like use of Venom in an actual Spider-Man film that we've gotten still. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Sam Raimi just did not understand the character at all and didn't want to use that character in the film for that reason, but was forced to. So yeah, and honestly, to that point, Topher Grace's performance of Eddie Brock and then becoming Venom just did not help matters much, because it was such an over the top, strange way to portray that character. And while to some degree, like, the actual Venom look in that film is somewhat cool, it still does look very cheesy. And then, of course, on top of that as well, we also are introduced to and use the character of Sandman, who, of all of the villains used in Spider-Man 3, is by far used, I would say, the best throughout the course of the film, and by far definitely looks the best out of all of the villains in Spider-Man 3. But of course, for me, as time has gone on, this film has grown on me more and more because of how ridiculous Tobey Maguire is as Bully Maguire, and that, like, emo version of Peter Parker doing the dance and all of that. It's just hilarious. I always love watching through that bit, because even though it is the most memeable part and most, like, dunked on part of that film, people still make fun of it to this day. I thoroughly love rewatching that part of Spider-Man 3 always whenever I watch the film. And then as well, I also do enjoy that it does give still a solid to satisfying conclusion to Harry Osborn as a character and his relationship to Peter as his best friend by the end of the film. So that is all some of, like, the strongest stuff in the film. The issue is that, I mean, it is definitely the weakest of the Raimi trilogy because of how overstuffed it is with the villains included and the way the story does play out by the end. Now, coming in at number 7, I have Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, this was the first true Spider-Man film we got in the MCU with Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Of course, we were first introduced to Tom Holland as Peter Parker and Spider-Man in Captain America Civil War during the whole airport battle. But this was the first time we got a true Spider-Man film in the MCU that came out just over a year after Captain America Civil War. And this was a really fun, just like basic Peter Parker truly in high school, and actually looks like he's in high school because Tom Holland at the time was a high school aged person in real life. So you actually buy into the fact that Peter Parker is a high schooler, and you get to play around with all of that, with having his best friend Ned as always his go-to person to meet up with, hang out with during school, see how they interact outside of school. And then we get little bits of seeing MJ throughout the film because MJ is part of the math team that Peter is part of, that they go down to DC to compete in a math, I don't know, math thing. I don't know what it's actually called, but yeah, we get introduced to all of the characters that we've grown to love even more so now. And then on top of that, the villain of the Vulture is one of my favorite villains in the MCU, partly because his reveal as being the father to the girl that Peter is in love with in the film is one of the most shocking twists I've ever seen in any MCU film, whether it was early on or even now post Endgame. So that was really fun, and getting to see Peter try to balance being a high schooler with being Spider-Man all throughout and battling all these different little crimes throughout the city, which we get an even better version of in Brand New Day, which we'll talk about in a little while. So yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming was just a really refreshing new take on getting a kind of intro story of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and seeing him actually be a high schooler as well as a teenage superhero going out there and saving the day and protecting the people of New York. Now, coming in at number 6 is Spider-Man No Way Home. This film is somewhat complicated for me because, as an idea and for the most part executed for majority of the film, is the best Spider-Man experience I have ever had, because it was a film, obviously we all knew going in, based around bringing all of the Spider-Men together and all of their villains from the previous Spider-Man films together in one movie, making it the live action epic fan service version of the Spider-Verse films, where you have Tom Holland's Peter Parker Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker Spider-Man, and Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker and Spider-Man all together on screen, battling Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, Alfred Molina as Dr. Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus. You get Jamie Foxx coming back as Electro, Sandman comes back, you get the Lizard coming back, you get... Is that all of them? And the point is, we get like a bunch of the classic Spider-Man villains from all 3 different variations of the live-action Spider-Man that we've had since the Raimi trilogy over 20 years ago. And this was just a phenomenal fan event Spider-Man film and experience for everyone who went to go see it, who's a Spider-Man fan. The issue with the film is that it's all based around a very lackluster setup at the beginning of the film, because Peter Parker is bummed out that him, MJ, and Ned don't get into the college that they really were entirely planning to go to together and continue living together and building their lives forward, being in college together and whatnot after that. And they don't get in, so Peter sees like a wizard or like ornament or whatever hanging on the coffee shop ceiling, then go and gets the idea to go see Doctor Strange, visit him, ask him to perform a spell to get them into college, but then it goes wrong. They don't whatsoever stop to discuss the rules of the spell and make it clear for Peter whatsoever. So then Peter ends up messing up during the Doctor Strange casting the spell, which then incites all of the villains to come in, and then we get to see Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker and Spider-Man come in later in the film, and we get all of that fan service epic stuff throughout the rest of the film. And I will say, like, once they get to the apartment with all the villains and trying to help the villains with their powers to try and send him back home. Once we get to that part, and then the rest of the film is absolutely phenomenal, and like just has such great payoff and such great like yes moments. But yeah, No Way Home ends up falling at number 6 for me because of the flimsy setup. But otherwise, it is I love this movie. I still very much love this movie overall. Coming in at number 5 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the second Spider-Verse film we got now. What is it now? 4 or 5 years ago or something? No, 3 years ago, maybe? I don't even remember, honestly, when this film came out, because it just felt like it came out so long ago. And I mean, I love this movie. I love both Spider-Verse films. Across the Spider-Verse, though, I have just a bit behind Into the Spider-Verse, because Across the Spider-Verse is truly a part one, or just truly half of a story, half of a full film, because of how epic the story is that they're telling. But as a like first half of the film, Across the Spider-Verse is just absolutely insanely impressive and awesome. The animation that they pull off in this film, even more so than Into the Spider-Verse, but with both films, is just truly the best that animation can offer us for animated films. They use it to such an awesome degree, and they truly know that. They know that they can use animation to truly push both the animation film genre forward with this, but also they know they can pull off so many things that you can't pull off in live action format. So yeah, Across the Spider-Verse, the story, I love the continuation from Into the Spider-Verse. I love the villain, the Spot. The first time I saw the film, I was like, is Ryan Reynolds voicing the Spot? It sounds a lot like Ryan Reynolds. Come to find out, it's not Ryan Reynolds. It's just an actor that truly sounded like Ryan Reynolds voicing this character. But I loved the villain of the Spot because of just how charismatic he is, but also truly how villainous he is, and what his plans are with and then Miles Morales and his Spider-Man, his journey to then team up with truly all the different versions of Spider-Man throughout all the different comics. It's really, really cool. Just awesome stuff. And then you get more an expansion of him and Gwen Stacy's and Spider-Gwen's relationship and dynamic within the film. We get Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, his version of Spider-Man, and his kind of much darker, somewhat villainous version of Spider-Man, because of because of his backstory and the way it affected him. And so that was really interesting to see with him and Miles and their banter and interactions with each other throughout the film. And then the big thing with this film is, of course, Miles's relationship to his parents, and then by extension also his uncle, and that becomes to an even more extreme degree as the film gets towards its third act and its epic cliffhanger ending to set up to set up Beyond the Spider-Verse, which I really hope we get soon. I don't really know when we're getting Beyond the Spider-Verse. Maybe it's next year, maybe 2 years from now. I don't know, but I really hope that when we do finally get Beyond the Spider-Verse, it actually pays off the setup of how great the setup is in Across the Spider-Verse, and really make this Spider-Verse trilogy potentially the greatest both animated trilogy and comic book superhero trilogy we've ever gotten in all of time. So yeah, Across the Spider-Verse is truly a great Spider-Man film, comic book film, and animated film. And now just ahead of that, at number 4 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This was our first introduction to this truly epic animated comic book come to life style of Spider-Man, our introduction to Miles Morales, the the actual use of the multiverse within the Spider-Man lore and the exploration of all the different versions of Spider-Man throughout the comics. And it was such a treat to go and see this film and be utterly surprised by how truly kind of perfect of a animated film, Spider-Man multiverse film it all was. And then on top of that, just how great and how personal the story was. And actually, real quick, just going back to Across the Spider-Verse just before this, fi- one of my favorite memories of going to see this film, because I saw it, I think, twice. I saw it once on my own. Second time I went with my partner, and they were so like even more excited than I was to go see this film. And I absolutely loved getting to watch their reaction to the cliffhanger and ending. It was so funny for me to watch them react to that ending because it was an even more exaggerated, like, oh my God, what kind of reaction than even I had having seen the film prior. So that was a really fun memory that I have with Across the Spider-Verse. Now, getting back to Into the Spider-Verse, yeah, this film, it was just such a pleasant surprise of being such a great animated film, Spider-Man film, and Spider-Man multiverse film, and kind of the sorry, the one of the only times that we've had since this film came out that truly pulled off exploring the multiverse within the comic book genre. So yeah, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was just such an amazing feat on so many different levels, story-wise, character-wise, animation-wise. Yeah, this was a truly a phenomenal film to get to see. Now, coming in at number 3 is the original Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man from 2002. This is the greatest version of the origin story of Spider-Man that we've gotten still to this day, because it's the first one. It's the first one that we got, and it told the origin story of Peter Parker and Spider-Man so perfectly, of Peter getting bitten by the spider and then starting to gain his powers and then becoming Spider-Man and having to conceal his identity, keep his identity from MJ finding out and from his best friend Harry finding out, Aunt May finding out. Of course, you get the classic Uncle Ben conversation in his car. With great power comes great responsibility. We got like everything that we know of Spider-Man and that we've gotten of the different versions of Spider-Man to this day was all because of how truly groundbreaking and great this first Spider-Man film was back in 2002, with the quirky and interesting style of Sam Raimi coming hot off the heels of creating the Evil Dead franchise through the 80s into the 90s, and then the perfect casting of Tobey Maguire as the title character of Peter Parker Spider-Man, even though he was much older. I mean, definitely don't buy that he's a high schooler. So, of course, thankfully we got Tom Holland, who was truly a high school aged kid at the time, taking over as Peter Parker and Spider-Man once we got that version in the MCU. But yeah, I mean, Tobey Maguire's version of Peter Parker and Spider-Man is still my favorite version of that character, and it's the films that of Spider-Man films that I grew up with, mainly because my brother was such a huge Spider-Man and mainly Venom fan growing up when he was super young, of like literally growing up between being born and the ages and up to the age of like 5, 6 years old. So Spider-Man 3 was kind of the main Sam Raimi Spider-Man film we had on repeat the most. So maybe that's a big reason why I even more so now as I've gotten older, really enjoyed that film even more than most people. But the original Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 are two of my favorite comic book movies and two of my all-time favorites, just Spider-Man films. So yeah, the original Spider-Man is just classic Peter Parker Spider-Man story, telling the origin story so well. And then, of course, to add just like the perfect icing on the cake is Willem Dafoe's phenomenal performance of truly becoming Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin, where for me, his best performance, especially as a Green Goblin, came in Spider-Man No Way Home. But I mean, that was all built off the fact that he was so good and so iconic in this original Spider-Man film. So seeing him be able to pull that off for me to even a better degree in No Way Home was even more impressive. But yeah, to add just like even more epicness on such an already great film, yeah, we have Willem Dafoe as the great Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. Now, coming in at number two, I have the newly released Spider-Man Brand New Day. This is in my review of the film, my spoiler-free review I put out, and then I said on my letterboxed review, reiterating a lot of the points that I had in my review that I put up for you guys just a couple days ago, or just yesterday, and my out of theater reaction a couple days ago. Um, it's easily my favorite of the Tom Holland era Spider-Man films, and the most pure Spider-Man story that we've had since Spider-Man 2 of the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi trilogy, because it truly goes and puts Tom Holland's Peter Parker on his own, finally, living on his own and trying to be both Peter Parker and anonymously Spider-Man from the whole rest of the world because of the ending events of No Way Home. But at the same time, he's pushing himself too far, so then his Spider-Man powers start evolving and changing, and that becomes really interesting to see as the film goes on. And then you get him still keeping his eyes on and keeping track of MJ and Ned and them having gone off to college and seeing how their whole college experience was, and then they've moved back to New York, so he's able to then start interacting with them a bit again, trying to get them back into his life a bit. But of course, his relationship with MJ it's totally different now and really has to probably, as we continue forward, rebuilt kind of from scratch, even though it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because I'm worried maybe that'll feel a bit repetitive, but I still do hope that him and MJ do end up finding love again and loving each other again. And then his relationship with Ned as the film goes on becomes interesting as the film especially gets to its end, where it seems like it's a lot easier for Peter to reintegrate himself with Ned and start building that relationship with Ned again as his best friend. But we'll see as once we get for sure the next Tom Holland Spider-Man film, whenever we get it, and to really see how those three relationships start to mend themselves again. So that's definitely what I'm most interested to see as we continue forward past this film. And then on top of that, Sadie Sink as, I'd say spoiler, but I even in my review, I don't really view this as a spoiler because I think we all knew going in. Sadie Sink portrayed Jean Grey, the X-Men character Jean Grey, our first true introduction of an X-Men character, and eventually that X-Men team. Eventually we'll get that film in the MCU, so that was really awesome. And her performance as Jean Grey was so good, and the portrayal and the way they show her powers throughout the film, especially tormenting Peter, and even just showing how she's able to control all the different people throughout just the general public people in the city of New York was just so interesting and something that I've never seen before that was just really cool to see. But of course, for when she's tormenting Peter, it is such a just like messed up thing to do. And I mean, Peter calls her out for it. But yeah, I absolutely loved Sadie Sink's performance in this film as Jean Grey. And then, of course, you also get Peter and his kind of bromance with Frank Castle, the Punisher, John Bernthal as his iconic character of John Bernthal and the Punisher in this film, and their interactions are so fun and so funny all throughout the film anytime they're together and bantering. And it's even funnier when eventually Peter brings MJ to have Frank kind of try and babysit her later in the film and see him and MJ banter together. That was really, really funny. The film for me did feel like it dragged a bit with its runtime, but that was kind of really mainly my one issue with it because overall I absolutely loved this film, and it was kind of the Spider-Man film that I've been waiting for ever since the really kind of the Tobey Maguire era Spider-Man films. But for me, coming in number one, and this has always been my favorite Spider-Man film, Spider-Man 2, the sequel to Tobey Maguire's Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2 for me is the best and most perfect Spider-Man film that we've gotten, of getting introduced to Alfred Molina as Dr. Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus, who for me is my favorite Spider-Man villain. It's very close for me between him as Dr. Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus, and Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. But for me, because of how much I love Spider-Man 2 and how good Alfred Molina's performance as that character is as well in the film, he's just my favorite Spider-Man villain. And the story told here is the most interesting to me for sure of any of the Spider-Man films we've gotten, where Peter now is fully in his Spider-Man element, going and saving people all around New York. Of course, the train sequence in Spider-Man 2 with him stopping the train from derailing because Dr. Octopus makes him go all crazy and out of control it's just one of the best sequences we've ever seen on screen in a Spider-Man film. And then as well, what really makes Dr. Octopus so interesting and great for me, and what makes it my favorite Spider-Man villain, is that he isn't really a villain. It's the arms that kind of turn him, take over his mind and turn him evil, because he is like a friend of Peter's in the beginning of the film, and they have this really nice conversation just a little bit earlier in the film, before he shows off his new tech arms to everyone, and then the arms take over his mind and start mind controlling him, and he becomes evil, and Peter has to go as Spider-Man and stop him. And then, of course, to that point, the ending of saving him from the arms in the end, and then MJ finding out Peter is in fact Spider-Man. That whole ending is just the most satisfying, great ending of any Spider-Man film for me, with just the iconic lines of brilliant but lazy, and it's just so good. I love Spider-Man 2. It has always been my favorite Spider-Man film, even when I was younger, but still to this day, with all the other Spider-Man films we've gotten, it still comes in at number one. Be sure to jump down in the comments section and rank all the Spider-Man films you've seen from worst to best. Have you seen all 11 of these? How many have you seen? However many you've seen, go down there, comment What's your ranking of them from worst to best? What's your favorite Spider-Man film? What's your least favorite Spider-Man film? Who is your favorite Spider-Man between Tobey, Andrew, and Tom? I'm sure a majority of us are going to say Tobey, but I'm sure there's also many of us who really do love Andrew's version of Peter Parker's Spider-Man and even Tom Holland's Peter Parker's Spider-Man. So let's have a nice, lively discussion down there talking all about the different Spider-Man films. And maybe some of you, your favorite Spider-Man is the Miles Morales Spider-Man from the Spider-Verse films. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you tomorrow for my ranking of all the July new release films that I saw, and I'll be ranking them from worst to best.